Hey everyone, and welcome to this different video. It's not Magic Towers for once. So, on the Rollercoaster Tycoon and Friends Discord server, the group park reopened again. So the group park is a park that is closed off for members with a certain role within the Discord community. And when you have this role, you're allowed to build in this park. Now, the group park is a bit more organized than our free-for-all park. So everything kind of gets planned out a little bit more as to where things go and how things fit together in terms of the team. This makes it a more of an organized type of park, which we put together with different members on our server. So we just got started and the entrance plaza has already been built. And I figured I was actually asked to work on a bit of backstage stuff. So I figured why not actually do that, because I've been doing that for Magic Towers as well. So I figured I can try out some different things here as well. So this park is a bit more European and a bit more family owned than Magic Towers is. So the approach is a little bit different, which made it pretty interesting to work on. First and foremost, it's a bit less planned out. Additionally, it is a bit more well put together with less expensive materials, as you can see there. I'm putting in a dirt road as well, because that will probably be cheaper. Later on, I'm adding some other stuff there just to decorate that. But for now, I figured we would have some kind of security at the gate of the park, just to make sure that people who don't have access to the backstage don't get in. It's just a very simple little guardhouse that's there to check if someone is allowed to get into the park or not. And with that, a little fence around it as well, just to close it off. I'm not actually pulling the fence through all the way, I'm just adding some trees there to kind of hide the fact that the fence isn't actually going anywhere else anyways. So the really cool thing about this park, I think, is that it makes it possible to play a multiplayer in a very coordinative manner. Because with a free-for-all kind of map, everyone just kind of does their own thing. But with a park like this, you can really work together on certain things if you feel like it. So we'll do that in a little bit as well. For now though, I'm just adding some extra decorations here, just some random junk mostly. Because this is the backstage area, it is going to be used to store all sorts of things. And you see this with real theme parks as well. You just throw in all the things that you don't want to show in the park right now. You can just throw that backstage and the guests won't see it anyways. So here I was experimenting with some stones that would prevent people from driving off the road. But I didn't think that would really work. So I opted for some bushes instead. So as you can see, in the meantime, other people are building things as well. So this junior roller coaster got built and a merry-go-round got built. Little spoiler alert. Those weren't too well planned yet, so they are gonna switch position much later on as the park gets thought out just a little bit more. So my goal for this park also was to eventually build some kind of small dark ride for the park as well. The type of dark ride that I'd be putting here is very different from what I want to do for Magic Towers Resort. But I think it will be a nice experience to try a more compact, more cheap dark ride for this park that we're doing here. So we can get to that later once we actually fill it in a bit more and the people who manage the park actually know where they would like to put a dark ride as well. So right now I'm just turning these empty fields here into some farmland. I would imagine that to be the type of area that this park is in right now, and I think just putting some fences there that aren't very straight really gives it a rural feel, and also makes it possible for the park to possibly expand to these areas later as well if they need to. So that's kind of my thought behind this. So right now a farmer might still own the land, but later on we can switch that up. Next up, I'm working on the parking lot together with TPM. Theme Park Maniac from the Rollercoaster Tycoon and Friends server. And I haven't done too many parking lots yet in NCSO. So this was pretty interesting because we kind of figured out like what kind of style of parking lot do we want to go for. How are we gonna do the road markings? Are we gonna do road markings? Those are all things to consider as well. So I tried out a few different techniques, and in the end I found a really neat trick for the road markings that I personally really quite like, and I might actually use that for Magic Towers Resort as well. So if you sink the the wooden fence with the snow on top into the ground, it gives a very unclean white line basically. And by unclean I mean it isn't perfectly straight, it doesn't come through all the way, it's just kind of there, not being perfect basically. And I really like that, because with all the other techniques you get a perfectly straight line that's very wide, it really stands out. But if you do it like this, like you're seeing on the screen right now, it's a bit more fake, and I think I like that for the skill aspect as well. It doesn't have to stand out, it just has to be there for the sake of there being lines, right? And that's what I really like this for. Now, if you're trying this yourself, make sure to disable zero clearance. You can do that in the cheats menu. Then you can kind of sink them into the ground using shift. But then also make sure you place them on both sides of the wall, if you know what I mean. Because if you rotate the camera, you can only see them from 2 angles. So make sure you place them on both sides of the wall. So I'm doing this together with TPM, so he's helping out with some other things. And I figured maybe at more near to the entrance he might actually place some electric car chargers. So that's what I'm building here. It's just a few gravestones on top of each other. And Montera later had a look at it and he had no clue what it was. But I think it's cool to have just to have something there that makes it feel like there's more going on here. And you don't even need to know what it is. Now next up, TPM had a great idea of actually making a bus station as well for this park. So he's gonna continue the walking path up the hill a little bit more, like you can see right now. And I think this is the really cool aspect about building a multiplayer with Roller Coaster Tycoon, especially for a more organized type of park, because you can really come up with these ideas together and then later on come together and help each other on these ideas as well. So right now I'm just adding some vegetation to the parking lot. I wasn't quite happy with it. It was a bit too much, so I'm gonna return to that later. But for now, I'm just gonna add some vegetation to the edge of the park, because that can be a bit more natural. So I can really go in there and fill that up with plants of different sorts and really layer it. So what I like to do with the vegetation is kind of put the large trees in the middle and then kind of slope down from there. So on the edges, we get the bushes and the other stuff. And then in the center we get the really tall trees. And I feel like that feels very natural if you look at it. So that's my go-to technique when I'm building vegetation like that. When it needs to be natural, or at least natural looking. Again, just adding a little backstage area here. Because of course the other side of the park might need some as well. And right now it just acts as a little bit of storage, and it also gives access to the other building that's there. So here TPM had kind of laid out the foundations for his bus station that he wanted to put here. So now it was time for me to actually put some vegetation around it and see what we can do with it. There I was really quickly testing out the different line techniques. I was discussing that with Wintera and TPM. Because it seemed like not a lot of people have used this wooden wall snow trick yet. So I might be one of the first to try it, and not everyone was as enthusiastic about it as me, but I personally really like it, so I'll stick to it for now. So here you can start seeing the bus station come together. TPM just added the platforms there, and in the meantime I'm just adding on more vegetation just to work these areas into their own little environment. And then later we can expand these forests into the park more as we find ourselves with some areas that just need some filling up. So here on the corner we kind of need some kind of building that can act as the bus station building, but more on that later. But for now, just more vegetation, as I'm kind of trying to see what TPM is doing in the meantime. So here TPM is kind of experimenting with some different kind of bus stop with some different kinds of bus stops. And in the meantime, I'm adding some just a digital bus sign that actually tells you when the buses are arriving and when they're going, which is pretty useful. So for now, the bus station is a bit large for the type of park that we have, but I think that's fine because the park is gonna grow really quickly, especially at the start, because the park only just opened up, so people are now really active in building, and then we'll soon see it grow really fast. Not in this episode though, or in this video. I'm not sure yet if there's gonna be more videos of this park, but for now, let's see how it goes. Maybe if I work on it more in the future, I could do another video of it, but for now this is just a one-off really. So I'm using a trick here for the doors by just stacking up some wooden fence gates on top of each other, which creates a pretty convincing door. You can really easily do that, and it's one of the better types of doors. Recently an NCSO park released, and in that park someone actually came up. I'm sorry, I can't actually remember who did it exactly. I should be able to give credits here, but I'm really sorry. But he sunk a vertical sign into the floor and made a little door like that, and that actually worked really well. So if you're looking for another option for a door in NCSO, try that out, because it looks really convincing. So as you can see, the parking lot is pretty clean. It was kind of inspired by Toverland's parking lot, and a little bit of Efteling as well. They really mix in some trees in the centers and make it safe for the people walking as well, so they can get out of the cars and be on a safe little path within no time, basically. Just adding some utilities to the paths here. Just make it a little bit more detail and make it come to life. Sadly, there won't be any peeps walking on these paths, so we really have to do with the utilities to kind of give the idea that this is actually gonna be used. Anyways, with the parking lot almost done, it was actually almost time to start working on a dark ride. You'll see a little time jump in a little bit, and that's when Terra actually messaged me and let me know that he actually had an idea for a spot where to put a dark ride. So we'll start seeing that in a second. For now though, we're just making a little a dotted line basically for the road that leads to these parking lots. So the cars would come in from the ride and then drive around it and then find a spot to park. So as you can see, I already made a little start here. I dipped the backstage path road there down a bit, so we could actually bridge over it. At first I was thinking that I could put a water type dark ride there, like a pirates type of ride system. It ended up being a bit too big, especially for the type of park that we have here. It didn't really work. So instead I'm opting for a Haunted Mansion style ride. So what I'm doing here is adding multiple layers, and I had the worst time trying to get a layout that actually fitted well and efficiently within the space that we had. It just took so long. Eventually I decided to just make the building a bit bigger in a different dimension, and that really helped to make this work in the end. And make it work efficiently as well, while still having plenty of room for different kind of scenes. So as you can see here, I'm putting the area where you go up and the area where you go down right next to each other, and that then just allows me to put in some extra little zigzags to really make the best use of this space, basically. And that's about it for the final layout of this dark ride. And now that I have the layout down, I can start theming it. So usually I work a bit differently when making dark rides though. But in this case, I am trying to kind of keep it realistic and kind of basing it on existing dark ride designs. So I figured it would be best to start with the layout and then just kind of fit some scenes in there where we feel like it. The way I like to do my scenes is by actually leaving a little part of the wall or the roof or even both open to let you look into the scene. And you'll see that in a second how I actually achieve that. But that's my favorite way to do dark rides in Roller Coaster Tycoon. Because of course, if you close it off completely, it's just another industrial looking building without any meaning to it, and it doesn't really give you an idea of what's in there. So I really try to, whenever I have an indoor ride, like a dark ride, I really try to make these places where you can really quickly peek in as if it's like a dollhouse that shows you what is going on inside of the ride and what the theme is. Especially with bigger dark rides, it's a little bit easier. With this smaller type of dark ride, it was a bit harder to pull that off. Anyways though, here at the top I'm putting an attic type of scene, and I really tried to convey that by using these diagonal supports that really create the beams of the roof that you're going through. And I think it works really well. I think if I show this to people, they would be able to figure out that this is actually an attic that you're going through. And then just putting some random junk in there, really. For this specific dark ride, I didn't have a specific theme in mind. Though it is a bit based on the Haunted Mansion or Phantom Manor or wherever you happen to be, whatever it is called in your area. So basically the classic Disney, haunted house, basically. The interesting thing though about the Haunted Mansion is that a lot of European parks have attempted to copy it. So in Europa Park, for instance, you have the Geisterschloss. I think it's the Geisterschloss, which is quite a copy of the Haunted Mansion. You actually have the stretching room in there. You have the Pepper's Ghost in there. They kind of stole that, and it's actually interesting because Europa Park is kind of known for doing that. If you look at pictures of Europa Park, you'll actually notice that on most pictures you see an Epcot type of dome in the park. They definitely placed that there to kind of make it look like an Epcot, make it look like a Disney park. They didn't seem ashamed of that, and most recently they opened up a soaring type ride where you have a flying theater. They're not very good in their creative department, but their park is pretty amazing. So do give it a visit if you get there. This is actually a really cool technique that I like to use, kind of trying to make really a mansion type walls. It's really simple. Just place some wooden walls with just some default walls on top of it. It really gives this haunted mansion wall, or just mansion wall in general, or at least for the interiors, of course, I mean by that, because it really looks like wooden boarding at the bottom of your walls, and that's what mansions seem to have, or at least old mansions seem to have that, from the movies that I have seen so far. So I'm really quickly trying out some different vehicles, because I had some Doom Buggy vehicles in here, or at least Vonterra put them inside of the scenery, the object selection, but they didn't work because they actually required brakes. Apparently the ride type was set to the actual haunted house type ride that you have in Roller Coaster Tycoon, and if you go down a hill they require a brake at the end. And this is because it's based on a funfair haunted house type ride where you actually have a little dip down. It's kind of like a roller coaster, so that's why it would require brakes. Though the more modern haunted house type of attractions usually are Omnimover type systems, and they of course are just powered all the way through, so they don't need brakes and they will not need chain lifts or anything like that. So here I'm closing off the building, and you'll see that I have the queue and the exit path going over this backstage area, because we wanted to save some space, because a dark ride building tends to be pretty large, and especially if you put it in the middle of the park, it's going to be very hard to hide the building, because theming it on all sides is pretty expensive. An example of a dark ride building that's actually in the middle of a park is Symbolica in the Efteling in the Netherlands. And while the front looks amazing, the backside is definitely a bit noticeable that they had to loosen up in terms of the theming a bit because of the budget that already went to the front. So that is sadly something that you kind of want to try and avoid. So when you're building a dark ride, just make sure to put it on the edge of your park or even outside of your park if you really have to. In this case, Onterra asked me to put it outside of the park, or at least asked me if that would be possible. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? We can totally do that. It actually makes it a little bit easier to make the facade. Because instead of filling up this giant wall of this industrial building, you can just build a separate building that you link it up to, which is what I'm doing here. Then in the end, with some trees, you can really hide the large building that is actually behind it. And that's actually how Disney likes to do things as well. Of course, we're not making a Disney park here, but it's still cool to be able to use these techniques here. So the entrance is nothing spectacular, really. It's really just kind of a little European small little castle, maybe not even a castle, but it works and it kind of fits the theme. It's not a haunted house per se, but I kind of was thinking about, I'm not actually sure what's called anymore, but Holiday Park. Yeah, Holiday Park in Germany actually has a haunted house, which is medieval themed, and they have a little castle that is the facade of the building. And inside of the ride, you actually go through the castle, and don't take your kids on this ride because it is it's pretty weird. It's not scary, but well, it is scary because of the crappy animatronics, but it is it's not very kid friendly. Some weird stuff happens in the ride. If you're really curious, just look up a POV of that. Anyways, I'm just adding a little emergency exit here at the back, and also a garage door. I could imagine if some kind of large scenery needs to be replaced inside of the building, you'd be able to use the garage door and get access to that. I can tell you a whole story about the Haunted Mansion and not having access. We'll save that for another day. So I really like making dark rides, and I hope to show you guys more of that. This is just a very basic one, but in the future, especially in Magic Towers Resort, we'll definitely get a lot bigger and a lot more detail. This was just a really quick dark ride that I did, a bit smaller and a bit different from the style that I'm used to. But if you guys would like me to do a tutorial of some sorts of dark rides in the future, just let me know, because I would like to do that in the future, and I am kind of planning for that once I get some dark rides inside of Magic Towers as well. Anyways, we're kind of getting to the end of this episode, and I'm looking at my video software here, just trying to time this out really well, and I think we have some time for please like this video and subscribe if you like this video and would like to see more in the future. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!